Thank you, sir. So here we go. Friends, Namaskar and good evening to all. Friends, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you all to the 7th edition of the JGU International Literary Conference. I wish to very modestly submit that over the years, this conference has become a significant literary event, which many among us look forward to quite anxiously. So once again, during this extended Corona phase, we shall have the pleasure of interacting virtually with great intellectuals and also get to know the thinking of young scholars, whose number is very significant this time. The response this time, if I quantify it in all, there have been some 300 registrations. It's another matter that right now, not everybody is so punctual, and we see a very much diminished number, but I hope as time passes, the number will grow. So we have 300 delegates, including the resource persons, and we had to close the intake of abstracts of papers at 1:23. By the due date of 12th June, whichever papers reached us, whichever abstracts reached us, after that, we said a full stop to that. And in the process, of course, we incurred the wrath of some 30 to 40 aspirants also, who were late in responding. I feel glad to share that we have the delegates from across the country, from Srinagar to Tiruchirappalli, and from Udaipur to Dibrugarh, as also from several other countries. But the conference is not about sheer numbers. It has to be a very meaningful exercise. While at our earlier conferences, we have broached themes like post-colonial literature, multiculturalism, emerging literary issues, comparative literature, theory, literature interface, etc. This time, we are here to discuss, or rather re-evaluate, postmodernism that is being taught widely in colleges and universities in India. What we find, and this is my personal observation, normally is that students are parroting the arguments for or against as these come from the Western Academy. But occasions like this conference provide us scope to discuss the basics and the contexts. So there is a lot to discuss it for the students and teachers of literature who have gathered here. Turning now to the galaxy of luminaries present here, I am really thrilled and privileged to welcome our chief guest, eminent public intellectual, Shri Rajiv Malhotraji. He is the founder of Infinity Foundation of USA. Malhotraji is a proud Indian who has left big business to launch an intellectual revolution by discussing issues related to India with young people. Now, can you consider somebody with a business empire spread over 20 countries, leaving it all at the age of 44, donating his almost entire wealth to the foundation dedicated to this noble cause? The YouTube videos of his lectures are indeed a craze. In fact, it was after watching one such video on the theme of postmodernism itself that I felt inclined to contact him. And I'm highly obliged to you, sir, for sparing time. And more than that, after a major surgery that you have had to undergo recently, that you've kept up your promise of addressing us all. Friends, it was a matter of pleasant surprise for me when I contacted him through email, inviting him as the keynote speaker at our conference, and he readily agreed to come over. Welcome you, Sri Rajiv Malhotraji,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I also wish to extend a welcome to Professor Dr. Kapil Kapoor ji. Right now, I don't see him, but maybe he'll join us. He is the chair of the session. He is chairperson of the Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Shimla, and a former chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya, Wardha. And before that, he was pro-vice chancellor of JNU. We have had the pleasure of welcoming this eminent scholar and educationist at this forum earlier also. Friends, Professor Kapoor is a well-known name in the Indian academe with 5 decades of teaching and research experience. He is indeed a doyen in the field of education. His interests include literary and linguistic theories, both Indian and Western, British literature, and Indian intellectual traditions. He has written and lectured extensively on these themes. I welcome Professor Kapoor. Thank you, sir, for sparing time, and you'll be joining us very soon, I know. Our dear Vice Chancellor, Professor C. Rajkumar, is stuck up in another very important and big World University Summit currently inching towards conclusion in our university. And he is stuck up there, will be joining us very soon, I've been told by his PA. Dr. C. Rajkumar was 34 when he pioneered the idea of a world-class university way back in 2009 and brought it to fruition in the form of O.P. Jindal Global University. We look upon him as a visionary and dynamic leader who combines practical administrative acumen with great scholarship. An alumnus of St. Stephen's, Delhi, he got various degrees from universities of Oxford, Harvard, and Hong Kong, all of which he joined on scholarship only. An accomplished scholar and orator, an enviable author whose views are sought on education and sundry subjects by governments also, Government of India also. And the government benefits by his advice with regard to all educational matters. Secondly, friends, one can easily mark that is a man in a hurry. And our university keeps on fixing ever new goals, encouraging us through self-example to achieve them. And we hear some people complaining also that he works too fast for us. Taking a 10-year-old university to the level of the topmost private university in the country is no small achievement, I should say. In addition to it, QS rankings placed it on the top as the best private university in India. The Government of India has already bestowed the status of institution of eminence. There are many other firsts, and it will take a lot of time if I recount all of them. All I can say is that JGU is indeed fortunate to have a Vice Chancellor of his dynamism and foresight. We'll be welcoming him shortly. I'm extremely pleased to announce that we'll also be having with us General Kocher, who is the Senior Director of Jindal Institute of Leadership Development and Executive Training. He is a distinguished army man who, after retirement, has taken over this office here in the university and also been CEO of the university earlier. Then we also have the honor of having here in this conference Dr. Prabhat Patabendi, who is founder and director of International Center for Research and Development Sri Lanka, and Dr. S. Ramaratnam, Vice Chancellor of JK University. We'll have, not today, but maybe on the valedictory, our registrar, Professor Patnaik. We have with us, of course, and it's confirmed, of course, Professor C.R.V. Rao, our old friend, former Vice Chancellor of Vikramshila University in Nellore. He has attended all our previous conferences, a great scholar, and listening to him every time enriches our knowledge, I should say. We have Professor R.K. Dhawan and Dr. Suman Bala, President and Secretary, respectively, of Indian Society for Commonwealth Studies, with which we have collaborated for the first 2 conferences. We have the Indo-German novelist, Ms. Roswitha Joshi. Welcome. Friends, I'm also thankful to certain other dignitaries from our own university. We have the distinguished presence of Professor Dennis P. Layton, who is the Dean Designate of upcoming Jindal School of Languages and Literature. It will start functioning from next year. Welcome you, Dennis. And I hope you'll enjoy this event. Also, we'll be having at this conference Professor Sri Sundar Cholia, who is Dean of Jindal School of International Affairs, a reputed political commentator and columnist, and a well-known face on various national and international TV channels. Professor Kenneth Holland is Dean of Research, Academics, and International Affairs, is also going to be with us. Professor Thomas Michael, Dean of Jindal School of Art and Architecture, has been very enthusiastically taking part in our conferences. Dr. Desmond Okosha from Nigeria, Dr. S. Chitra from Bhutan are attending first time, but Dr. Eliza Binte Ilahi from Bangladesh and Dr. Violeta Trofimov from Russia have been kindly attending conferences and are present today also. A hearty welcome to you. There are many other dignitaries and friends who have accepted my invitation to be here. I may not be able to take the names of all the chairpersons and panelists who are present here, but as we proceed with the program, we'll get to know more about them and listen to them also. For the present, I'll seek their forgiveness. Thank you all for you, all of you dignitaries, for taking pains to be here. Welcome to you. So over the next 3 days, as we listen to and interact with great academics and scholars, we shall have more insight into the theory or concept of postmodernism. I call upon the researchers and students attending this conference to participate wholeheartedly and meticulously to get the benefit of the discourse that will emanate from this conference. Friends, not taking more of your time, let me now request the chief guest, Shri Rajiv Malhotraji, to kindly address us on the topic of postmodernism, and of his own volition, he has tried to expand the area and also talk about AI, and that's going to be kind of bonus for us. Thank you very much, sir. Malhotraji, over to you.
Namaste, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. This is my first time in this conference, but when I was looking through the list of papers and speakers, I was very impressed. A large number of scholars on a large number of topics across the board on postmodernism and critical theory, literary theory in general. This is very impressive. Now, that's the good news part. I also want to make, my talk will be a provocative talk. I want to provoke the young scholars and also the more experienced persons here with some fresh ideas. The field of literary theory, critical theory, postmodernism, all the different aspects of literary theory is being shaken up in a way that has not happened since in the last several decades, since this field emerged. And this is being shaken up by artificial intelligence. It's being shaken up in such a serious way, and yet hardly anyone in the field of postmodernism or literary theory or any of these related areas seems to be aware of this big tsunami that is coming. It's not just coming, it's not coming 30 years later or 100 years later, it's like right now. And I will tell you what's happening. Artificial intelligence has been developing algorithms which learn on their own. They learn what you read, what you like, what you don't like. They can mimic you, so they can talk like you. Algorithms are being used to generate text. So the question is, who's deconstructing that? How do you deconstruct text when the agency is not a human agency? The agency that's developing it, you can't say this is Brahmanical voice or this is whatever voice or something. You cannot deconstruct using the kind of vocabulary and the kind of tools that the people in theory are used to, what you've been raised on, what you are being taught, none of those are going to be valid. None of those apply, because now you're deconstructing a text whose author is not a human author. So what are you going to do? How are you going to locate this algorithm in the space that you know, gender space or whatever space that you've been taught? Because this is an algorithm. It's not even a human. It is not conscious. Now, let me explain to you what is going on. First, I'll tell you, then I'll give you the implications. There are chatbots, which are computer programs that are mimicking humans and answering questions, engaged in debate, supporting somebody, opposing somebody. A large percentage of these automated chatbots that the Google and the Facebook and all these and a whole lot of private companies are throwing out in the social media, they're actually just algorithms, very intelligent algorithms that are constantly becoming smarter and smarter based on the feedback. Algorithms are being used to write emails without human involvement, write editorials. There was a competition recently where people in the AI field were invited to have their algorithms compose an editorial of 800 words on some topic. And so this algorithm went searching the entire internet for that topic, picking up what's the latest news. The topic could be, what's happening in the second wave or third wave in coronavirus. It could be something about, trade war with China. It could be something about what's happening in Kashmir, whatever the topic is. It's able to compile information, figure out what's going on, construct a very well-written, good English with lot of logic, with a flow, something that is so interesting that human beings, human editors in various newspapers and magazines, when they are given these editorials, some of them written by machines, some of them composed by human beings, and they're asked to evaluate what they think of this, they are not able to tell the difference. They are not able to tell these two are from a machine or these three are from a machine. They're not able to tell. So if experts are not able to tell whether it's a man or a machine writing all this, that's pretty impressive. Algorithms are also able to compose music. Same story. There have been contests where algorithmically generated music is being seen as, hey, this is pretty good, and we can't tell the difference. Art. So you see, what is happening is algorithms are composing using natural language processing, NLP, which is a huge topic in computer science, the understanding of natural language. So how to understand human language and being able to tell the motive of a piece that you are reading. Is this motive, good, bad, left wing, right wing? Is it for, against a topic? Sentiment analysis. There's something called sentiment analysis, which looks at the sentiments. It's all algorithms evaluating millions of messages that are out there to see what is the sentiment on a given topic. What is the sentiment on the CAA issue that's going on while there are riots and there are farmers, or there are farmer riot going on somewhere? What is the sentiment on that? So the algorithms, rather than humans, are the agencies evaluating the discourse, deconstructing the discourse. Forget us deconstructing the algorithm. Right now, the algorithm is deconstructing our narratives. So these algorithms are behaving more and more like human agency in the way in the analysis of narratives, in deconstructing narratives, and in coming up with new narratives. So it's not only a participant in terms of evaluating and intervening with the discourse, but also putting its own discourse into the mix. Now, here is an interesting point. A lot of people are mixed up and muddled and confused, including some AI people, because they think that since machines are not conscious, they are not able to do these things. But let me tell you this, being conscious has nothing to do with whether it can behave and mimic in an intelligent manner. So machine intelligence and algorithmic development of discourse and intervention with discourse and a deconstruction of our human discourse has nothing to do with whether these machines are conscious. They are not conscious, and they're not going to become conscious. But still, natural language processing is a field in computer science which has advanced to the point where it's able to make algorithms behave in this manner. May I request somebody who's got they're not muted. Maybe it's Ravi Bhushan, but now he's muted. There are some noises coming, and I think it'll be better for the audience if they can have a kind of kind of a noise-free environment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for muting. So the first point I want to make is algorithms have arrived as discourse participants. They'll argue with you, they'll deconstruct you, they'll block you. They have more authority than you and I have, because all these social media are being driven by algorithms. Don't think that Mark Zuckerberg is sitting there deciding what to think and who to block. It's not human beings. They've turned loose algorithms, given some general rules to these algorithms, general policies, general biases, general preferences, and the algorithms then go and implement this in a very large scale. After all, there are billions of people sending billions of messages. It is humanly impossible to manage and control all that, and yet it is being controlled. The social media discourse is being controlled with certain agendas, with certain things allowed, certain things encouraged, certain things not encouraged. If I put out a video with a certain message and I use the word COVID, or I use the word caste, or I use the word Kashmir, or I use the word Modi, or any one of these, or Trump, or whether I use the word, China, whatever. I mean, there are all these algorithms. They look up what is this guy saying? Is he for this? Is he against that? And then there are rules on what will they allow, what they will not allow, who will be shadow banned, who will be blocked, who will get a warning. So the algorithms are taking over the public discourse. This is the first point that I want you to understand. And this has nothing to do with whether these algorithms are conscious or not. So the dominant discourse and the new deep structures, are not the old structures that, this is gender structure, this is a structure about, post-colonial and whatnot. The algorithms are creating new structures about social justice, about climate change, about human rights. So the discussion on these topics is shifting away from the kind of things that all of you are used to reading, and a whole new kind of discourse, which is machine generated, is taking over. This is a very important thing for the profession that all of the scholars here are in. So if you know the history, a new worldview called humanism emerged. A worldview called humanism emerged many generations ago in Europe. And humanism was a big revolution in thought. And humanism, one of the offshoots of humanism was liberalism. So what we call liberalism is an offshoot of humanism. That whole movement is based on humanism. Now, humanism itself is being attacked by AI. And I won't go into that here because that's a huge topic on its own. But in my book on AI, I've talked about all these things. I have written a recent book called Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power. You got, those who are interested can. It's been out for several weeks. You can look up, and in here I'm talking about how AI is actually defeating. AI is a product of liberalism, by the way. AI is a product of materialism, liberalism, and AI it's now threatening its own origin. It's threatening the very humanism which gave birth to it. This is a very interesting topic, which is kind of for those who want to go even deeper. Now, the elephant in the room is how do you deconstruct an algorithm? We are used to deconstructing human discourse, but how do you deconstruct an algorithm? How do you even know how this algorithm is working? How do you attribute motive to this algorithm? This is a very interesting point that you have to use. So now let's look at how do these algorithms learn? A child is trained by the environment it's being brought up in, by the kind of reading material, by the kind of narratives that the child is exposed to. A student, even a human being, keeps learning based on whatever discourse you are given. And you, as postmodernists, know there is no such thing as neutral. Everything has a bias because the people who generate it have a bias. So somebody may say this is the absolute grand narrative, but that's not true. That grand narrative includes in it a point of view, a particular tilt, a particular bias in it. Similarly, in the case of AI, the algorithms are not something that a programmer puts together. The algorithm learns by processing examples. It goes on processing, it goes on learning through analysis of data that constitutes a lot of examples, millions of examples. So whatever data is being fed to train the algorithm gives it the bias. So let me just tell you this. In a Hindu Gurukulam, he'll have a certain point of view. Suppose a child is raised in a Muslim madrasa, he'll have a certain point of view, different one. Suppose a child is raised in a Catholic school, he'll have a different point of view. Suppose he's raised in a Maoist, Marxist training camp, he'll have a different point of view. Everybody knows that. So now if you take these texts, will also have that point of view. If you take the entire library of madrasas and use that to train algorithms, they will have that point of view. That's how algorithms are. If you train them on the text of the Vedic tradition, all the commentaries and all the analysis, the algorithm will have a certain point of view. So like that, I could go on giving you examples that there is no such thing as a neutral algorithm. The algorithms are biased the way humans are biased because the algorithms are trained using text the way humans are trained, and these texts are the product of previous people, and so hence they contain a kind of historical bias. So what I'm saying is two things. First thing, I said that algorithms are taking over more and more of the text business, not only evaluating but also producing new text, passing commentary, evaluating, judging, and more editors are using this, more and more thinkers are using it, think tanks are using it, certainly social media is using it, certainly politicians are using it. That is one point. Second point is that these algorithms are not neutral. Now they will tell you that this is a very neutral algorithm and it's going to block you if you say bad things. But who decides what is bad things? They will say that they have terms like violating social norms. So you are being blocked for violating social norms. Well, who decides what are social norms? According to YouTube, anytime I put out a video promoting Ayurveda as a potential for COVID treatment, they would send me a warning message saying, this would be the algorithm sending me a warning message, that this is being flagged as violating bias, rules on bias and things like that. So they consider Ayurveda to be biased and allopathy to be normal. So this is somebody's point of view. I mean, this is the people who turned loose these algorithms, made these policies. So somebody makes the policy and the algorithm goes according to the policy. My team challenges this, and then YouTube gives it to human beings to evaluate because they have a capability that if you escalate the challenge, then the humans will evaluate. Always the humans come back and say, we don't think there's a bias in what you said, that you're not fine, but we can't overrule the algorithm, sir. We work here. We agree with you, but the algorithm has decided this. So this algorithm is becoming a big boss. Even inside these big companies, even their own employees cannot override the algorithms. So this is a very serious situation for anybody. And I'm surprised that the people in literary theory and critical theory have not discovered this and they have not made a noise about it, because your whole purpose is to look for biases and look for how to deconstruct narratives and figure out what's hidden messages in them, hidden points of view that are not normal. This is now happening with algorithms on a very gigantic scale. Now the computers are able to turn this over on a very massive scale. So you don't even need human beings to do all this. So what is happening is a pyramid of power, where at the top are people who control these algorithms, who have points of view, who have agendas, and that is in these algorithms in the form of whatever texts are being used for training purposes. So I asked Google, I asked some Google people because they are they're developing a next generation engine, that will compete with GPT-3. GPT-3 is one of these things that an organization put together. It's very famous, and it's able to understand text, and it has done this by reading and being trained on millions and millions of pages of various kinds of writings. So it's incorporated all that, and now it knows how to judge and evaluate and understand meaning. So everybody's competing against GPT-3. China has announced something which is going to be much bigger than GPT-3. Much bigger vocabulary, much more content China is doing. Google has announced its own Google Brain, and that is called. Microsoft has something. Facebook has something. All these guys, all the digital giants are racing each other to compete against GPT-3. So when you ask when I ask the Google people, how are you training the algorithm when it comes to something like Indian culture, Indian civilization? And the answer is, there is a large body of academic works. So I said, academic works written by whom? And so when they showed me, those are exactly the people I'm fighting and arguing with all the time. They are biased. They're colonized. They have what I call Hindu phobia. They are involved in what I call breaking India, and so their texts are the legitimate texts in the eyes of the Western Academy. That is the text that is legitimate. Those are the texts that are quoted by the newspapers in the international press. So the AI algorithms are using those very texts for learning. So now what you'll find is all of this Hindu phobia and breaking India forces and the kind of stuff that people like me are fighting, I in particular for 3 decades or 4 decades, all of that kind of bias is now going to come in the form of algorithms. This is a serious matter. So now, and Wikipedia, a lot of them are training their algorithms on using Wikipedia. But Wikipedia is not kind of an absolute neutral source, which Wikipedia has its biases. The Wikipedia entry on me is biased because when I challenge something, they don't accept my word. They've accepted somebody else's word because everybody is allowed to participate, but you are rated in terms of your ranking. Different people have different ranking. A person of higher rank can overrule what you've written because whatever you edit, you put in, a person of higher ranking in the Wikipedia scheme can override it. So it's again a system of power. There is a hierarchy of power. It is not a democracy like people think. There is a hierarchy of power within Wikipedia. Even one of the founders of Wikipedia, whom I know well, in interviews with me, has said that. So where do you get text that is neutral? Well, you cannot get text that's neutral. Whatever text you get has some kind of bias in it. And so that's the bias that goes into the algorithms which are being trained using such texts. Now, there is a movement in the US which is trying to fight this algorithmic bias. Blacks have complained that algorithms are, whether they're intentional or not, but they're biased racially. The reason they are biased racially is that many of these algorithms have been trained on texts and on history of law and crime and all of that, which is biased because blacks are stereotyped in those texts. They are considered inferior. They are more likely to have violence and be criminals according to that kind of big data. And the algorithms are taken over that bias. Feminists have argued that these algorithms have gender bias. LGBTQA people are fighting, some of them litigating that some of these algorithms are biased. So the biases of these algorithms is not something novel, the new idea I'm telling you. I'm just bringing it in a different context. But there are different groups, different human rights groups, and different public interest groups that are already fighting the digital giants, taking them to court, saying that their algorithms are biased, and hence all the stuff they put out and how they filter out news and what they consider to be right, wrong, and all that is being evaluated and adjudicated by biased algorithms. So there is this whole field called demanding transparency of algorithms. Demanding that there be accountability of algorithms. There are people who are suing the algorithms for bias, and then the question is, who are you going to sue? Well, you're going to sue the owner of the algorithm. He may say, I didn't do this. I'm not a biased person. The point is that it's your algorithm. It's like saying that the car had the accident and I didn't do anything. The point is, it's your car, and you ultimately have control over it. So in the defense of the algorithm people, these algorithms really, the developer really does not know how the bias came in. I'll just write an algorithm and tell it to learn through experience, and the experience it's having maybe in a community where one point of view is dominant, and so the algorithm picks it up. If I turn my algorithm loose in a certain type of community, and I said, go learn from them, listen to what they're saying, and learn the way child learns by listening. This algorithm will not be a neutral algorithm, because the views and the tilt in that community will be assimilated into that algorithm's own mindset. So the problem that India faces as a result of this is very unique. So far, I've told you what is generally a problem, nothing to do with India in particular. People in the United States and Europe who are at the cutting edge of AI are in dialogue. I'm part of that group. Are in dialogue with people in literary theory and critical theory to see, how does it revolutionize critical theory, because it revolutionizes critical theory. What I'm now talking about is going to become very common knowledge, commonly talked about. In future conferences like this, the AI will definitely be there. I'm just ahead of this thing. I'm just giving you this, sort of, maybe we are ahead of ourselves. Maybe we are talking about things that the community of scholars ought to know but doesn't know. But what I'm telling you is this: is the following. The AI as a voice, as a development voice in narrative and a critical voice in controlling narratives, because AI is owned by these very big giants, and these giants have a lot to say about what narrative flourishes, what narrative is blocked, which narrative is given a high rating and everybody likes it. They are controlling the narrative, and the AI is their weapon. AI is the tool, the device through which they're controlling this. So what I'm telling you is that this is in the hands of people with an agenda. This is another thing I'm telling you. I'm looking at these the people who are into this digital economy, if you will, and they have a point of view. They are all, whether it's a Bill Gates, whether it is the Eric Schmidt, is very, very nationalistic American, American kind of almost right-wing kind of fervor he has, but I would say more nationalistic beyond left or right. There are strong left-wing, thinkers in this field, and they have a lot of investments in algorithms. There are strong Christian. There is a whole community called Christianity and AI, and I'm participating in that. There is a whole community called AI and Faith. The latest issue of New York Times Magazine, the article was on on AI and God. I mean, what they were talking about is faith. How does AI interact with Islamic point of view, Christian point of view, Jewish point of view? The Vedic point of view has not been represented there. And that is where I come in. I'm trying to get in and represent a Vedic point of view, that we have a lot to say about AI and its biases. And we need a seat at the table also. But the problem I'm facing is that in India, you do not have people interested in this topic. You do not have people who even know about this topic. I mean, they're very dubious. Some people think this must be some kind of a conspiracy theory this guy is talking about. They're not taking the matter seriously. And that's a concern of mine. So to conclude, what I want to say is this: India has not invested, neither at the government level, nor industry, nor academic. The computer industry, the AI industry has not invested in creating its own equivalent of GPT-3, which would give us an engine that is based on natural language processing, that has our point of view, that has studied all our texts, all our shastras. It has also looked at all the other philosophies and all the other points of view in the world, but looked at it from our point of view. We don't have such a machine. We don't have such a device. So we cannot sort of say that somebody else's algorithms have a problem and ours are superior in managing the discourse, because we don't have such a capability. Where is India headed in this? This is not a pleasant message to give, but it has to be given, especially since you are in the business of theory and looking beneath the surface and interpreting things. I have to give you this message. And the message is this: Westerners, mainly United States and also to some extent Europe, are perfecting these algorithms that are controlling the social media and controlling the discourse and politics and whatnot. And these algorithms that they are controlling have some biases that are very sort of Western oriented biases. You might say that these algorithms are tools of colonization. So AI is recolonizing the world intellectually. Artificial intelligence and the recolonization of the world is a big topic in my book. I have chapters on this book, so you can read it. I have chapters on the return of the East India Company, because the East India Company was a private company, like Google is a private company, and many of these are private companies, but they got huge amount of power because they understand all your secrets. They have been listening to you. They have your data. They have your private data. And the machine learning is figuring you out. It's saying that this guy is vulnerable to this. This guy has these, he likes these things, he dislikes these things, he's ideologically this way, politically that way. These are the ways that he's compromised. These are the skeletons in the closet that could be exposed to bring him down. I mean, the algorithms know a whole lot about you. You might be surprised how much the algorithms know about you. In some ways, they know even what you do unconsciously, which you may not be aware of yourself. Certainly the algorithms know more about you than your friends, relatives, even your very close people, those who are very close to you. So with algorithms able to keep track of billions of people and figure them out and manipulate them, it's a very dangerous world that we are entering. And India does not have its own investment. India does not have its own investment in anything similar to GPT-3, even though it's based on natural language processing. And natural language processing started out with the study of Panini's Sanskrit grammar. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, my friends in the Sanskrit department at JNU, the Sanskrit department, Delhi University, in Varanasi, in all these kind of places, in Pondicherry, were being flown to all the conferences on natural language processing because the computer science people wanted to learn the whole NLP field. They wanted to learn Panini and how to use that grammar to translate from one language to another. So the field of computer science benefited a lot from Indian thought in the early days, and then it went beyond. It went beyond on its own, and now it's pretty much free to go and keep extrapolating and expanding on its own very rapidly. So, but India has been left behind. In some Indians in an individual capacity helped all this, but they are left behind. A very large percentage of AI researchers in the world are Indians, but in a personal capacity. They're not doing anything for India. They're doing something for themselves. They got a job. They're doing something for themselves. They're making good money. I'm very proud of them, very happy. They're big shots all over the place. But that is not Indian intellectual property. That intellectual property belongs to Google, or it belongs to Microsoft, or it belongs to Apple, or whoever. It belongs to somebody else. It does not belong to India. So India as such, as an entity, does not have ownership of a whole lot of this kind of AI technology, and does not have its own capabilities to manage the social media and the intellectual discourse and the political discourse using algorithms as a weapon. So if we are not able to do it, we are vulnerable to other people who are doing it. So what's happening is all this technology is being imported into India, and Indians are getting colonized. So the next generation of postmodernists, people who are post-colonialists, people who are into gender studies, people who are into social justice, human rights, the next generation of such people are going to be trained by, and they are going to be taught how to use algorithms, how to evaluate algorithms. They will learn all the things that I'm telling you. But those things which they will be taught will be with a bias, will be with a Western bias, because that's where these things are being developed. So, if you look at who developed post-colonial studies, where did this whole idea of Orientalism, and then post-colonial studies, and then subaltern studies, then gender studies, then postmodernism, all the what I call five waves, the five waves of critical theory applied to a literary theory, applied to India and Indian culture, are the five waves of Indology. I have written on waves of Indology, written works and given lectures and all that on it. This is basically one wave of import after another. Indians are basically just regurgitating, parroting, what they read from foreign, writers, foreign thinkers. So foreigners are the theory wallas. The theory wallas in this field are foreign people. They are the ones who've come up with all these different kinds of theories that you read. And the Indians are basically data wallas. We supply case studies, we supply examples, we supply, sir, in my neighborhood, this happened, they abuse this woman, they abuse this caste wala. I'll fill it, supply it as my case study. Maybe I'll be sent on a plane ticket to somewhere in a conference. So basically, Indians in the field of literary theory and critical theory, postmodernism, postcolonial, etc., are applying Western models to Indian cases, Indian examples, Indian case studies, but we are not creating our own theories. And now with the advent of algorithms and AI, the same thing is happening. These algorithms with their biases are being brought into India, and Indians are absorbing them and simulating them. I won't name names, but big companies, big government people are involved in this, in the sense of importing these ideas in the name of progress, in the name of, hey, we are becoming very world class because we've now got this collaboration with Google, not realizing that what we are really doing is inviting the East India Company to come in and set up shop here. That's what is going on. So this is a very provocative statement I'm making, that the AI is using postmodernism, critical theory, all of these kind of these things as a window to get in and bring with it all the biases. And it's a tsunami that's sweeping. And a lot of the young people in this field are mesmerized, but this is going to recolonize India. Therefore, this is, my talk is more like, hey guys, let's wake up and do something. I've written a whole book on it. I'm willing to give workshops, talk about it, have Q&As, and I've had about 50 of these discussions and Q&As in the last 5 or 6 months, I would say, and I'm willing to do more. I'll stop there. I just want to provoke some young people so they can look into it, and hope we can create a kind of made in India AI with made in India algorithms. Indian, if there are going to be biases, then we might as well have our biases, because everybody has their biases. The Chinese have got their China biases. There is no deconstruction of China's grand narrative. They're putting their whole Chinese grand narrative into AI and implementing it not only on Chinese society, but also exporting it to Africa and exporting it to various other countries that they're trying to colonize. So India as a player, India has to become a player, and we are not a player yet. The future, the importance of the people in the theory business in general is huge, because either you'll get colonized and it'll be bad for India, because you'll become the colonizers of the whole lot of Indians through all these theories that you bring in, or you could be the home team that counters it. You are educated, you know all this stuff, you know the game, and AI could be an opportunity for us to turn things around, because it's still very new. And if we learn this and train our young people in this, we may have a made in India position to counter all this, and become a true Vishwaguru that we think we are. So with that, I will stop. I'll be happy to take any questions, or either now or later on at some other point, if you want to set up a Q&A session. And I want to thank the university. You are a great university. The mere fact that you are having conferences on very broad, big topics like this, provocative topics like this, is a good sign. And I'm glad I got this opportunity to speak to especially your young people. Thank you very much. Namaste to all of you. So Professor Batra or whoever is in charge could take over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra. My name is Raj Kumar. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Hope Regional Global University. It is indeed a proud privilege for me to listen to most of what you said. And I also want to take this moment to invite all of you to this 7th JGU International Literary Conference on Postmodernism, Time for Reappraisal, organized by the English Literary Society of Hope Regional Global University. I appreciate the presence of Professor Dr. Kapil Kapoor, Chairman of the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies. And of course, we heard Mr. Malhotra, founder of the Infinity Foundation, United States. I am a lawyer and a law professor by training. Most of my educational training has been in the field of law. And of course, for the last 11 years, since the very founding of this university, I have been the Vice Chancellor of this university. And what I can say from what I heard, but also the larger thematic framework of this conference is the importance of dialogue and discourse on these issues that Mr. Malhotra had spoken about. I think it is only fair to say that the kind of discussions and debates that ought to happen in universities need to be promoted and promoted more vigorously. I want to take this moment to compliment the work of Dr. Batra as well as Dr. Gopa Nayak and other members of the English Literary Society for taking this effort to organize the International Literary Conference. It's grown from strength to strength. The university itself is only 11 years old, and to have the 7th JGU International Literary Conference speaks volumes about the passion, the commitment, and the dedication of our faculty and staff in this regard. I also want to mention that it is my proud privilege to formally inaugurate the conference. I know that I got delayed because of another event. We've just been in the process of having the World University Summit for the last 3 days, which itself has witnessed over 150 thought leaders, over 100 vice chancellors and presidents and rectors of universities around the world, from 25 plus countries in 6 different continents. It was inaugurated by the Honorable Vice President of India and the Union Education Minister, as well as the Chairman of the University Grants Commission. And we've had intense debates and discussions on a range of issues that are affecting the future of universities in the world. I had to be part of that panel, and hence I got delayed. But I also want to mention that hearing Mr. Malhotra, I can only say that the kind of issues that he has raised are not only important for all of us to think as educators, but also to be able to bring it within the context of our curriculum, course structure, teaching pedagogy, research methods, as well as broader engagement with our students. Issues relating to, and it was fascinating to hear him connect issues relating to artificial intelligence and robotics and machine learning and all the other things that we are these days becoming more and more familiar with its broader purpose and its impact in our own societies. As a professor of constitutional law and as somebody who has worked in the field of human rights, I can only say that we need to not only be conscious of the impact on society, but also its huge impact on some of the more fundamental and foundational values relating to law and ethics, including issues relating to privacy, which is a matter of great concern for all of us. I also think that India as a nation, as a country, needs to be conscious of making its own choices when it comes to embracing some of these technologies and how it will affect and impact the future of our own society. And this process needs to be more deliberative. And one of the things about a deliberation of this kind to be happening in a democracy is that it has the possibility of bringing together different stakeholders to the conversation. Conferences of the kind that we're having today in the form of the JGU International Literary Conference, focusing on the theme of postmodernism and time for reappraisal, needs to engage with these issues, grapple with these issues, and promote a conversation that will help us understand and appreciate it much better. In fact, a few weeks ago, the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy and our university, in collaboration with the United Nations, organized a conference that focused on ancient Indian philosophy and religion and thoughts, and how they end up connected to artificial intelligence. And I will request Dr. Batra to share some of the proceedings of that conference with our participants and speakers of this conference as well. So in conclusion, I want to say that the kind of speakers that have come together and the thematic sessions that are being held in the next few days will provide immense food for thought, but also will end up becoming a repository of knowledge and perspectives that will be useful not only for researchers and faculty members, but also for students to be able to have a better understanding and appreciation of the impact of these issues in the future. With those words, I once again want to extend a warm welcome to all of you who are present and are indeed participating in the 7th JGU International Literary Conference. I deem it a great pleasure to declare the conference open and to wish the conference and the people and the proceedings every success. Thank you. You need to unmute yourself, Dr. Batra. I'm not able to hear you, Dr. Batra. I don't know whether others are able to hear you.
Now probably it will be okay. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, sir, for your beautiful words and laudatory comments here. What you said definitely will be done, and I'll share with them the proceedings of the conference that recently took place that linked Indian thought with AI. And second thing is, every time I talk about my university, it fills my heart with pride to declare that ours is a university where different points of view are actually allowed to be talked about, to be discussed in detail, and wherever there's some meeting ground, that is encouraged. So thank you very much, sir, for bringing into existence this wonderful university. It's all due to your vision and your dynamism that we exist, and we have this pride of place in the community of academia. That said, may I request you for one more minute to stay on to release a book that I recently published, and actually the moment it was printed, the copies was sent to you yesterday and to me also. So I'll just take a minute to share the screen, and then we'll have it here, sir. I think it could be seen now. Sir, here I present to you in virtual form my book to be released. And the moment you release it through words, this will be released.
Well, I have great pleasure in releasing the book authored by Professor Jagdish Batra. And I know for sure that the book will be of immense interest to people belonging to various disciplines.
Thank you so much, sir. And may I say a few words about this book now? Well, you have seen the cover of this book. And it's a book that actually evolved out of my habit of tracking new novels written by Indians, whichever information I got from whichever source. And this was out of my interest rather than for any kind of reward or recognition. But I observed that there was no book on literary history of Indian English fiction in the market that covered the period after the year 2000. So that actually encouraged me to bring out this book because it deals with the period 2001 to 2020. And besides, it enlists some 1,400 novels in it written during this period of the past 2 decades, and also categorizes and comments on 400 novels, all written by Indians, okay, whether they're staying here or abroad. And it's divided in 2 parts. In the first part, there's a brief history of the noteworthy novels by Indian authors of Indian origin. And these have been classified into thematic segments like individual psyche, social psychological history, social political history, myths, region, crime, travel, terror, romance, etc. All these categories are there. And the second part of the book deals in detail with the selected fiction from a particular theoretical angle, whether it's post-colonial or post-modern or new historicism or psychological analysis or structural analysis, etc. So I hope the book will serve as a resource for students, researchers, and faculty members. And it's beautiful brought out by Atlantic Publishers in a very record period of time. They had been sitting over it for the past 3 months because of the corona, but once they got going on 4th or 5th of this month, they went about it on war footing, and the book was out by 22nd, landed on my table as well. So thank you very much, sir, for your words of encouragement to me. And
Thank you very
I'm
much.
so glad that you have been able to release it here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So friends, we proceed now with the Q&A, and I'll invite now, and may I take some questions from the chat box first of all, in case they are there. But let me stop sharing first of all. Shubham, could you help me here? Shubham from IT.
Yes, sir.
Get me stuck up here. I'm not able to see the chat box here. The bar is gone.
Sir, on the upper side, there is option of stop sharing.
In case you are able to see the questions in the chat box, please proceed.
So
can you
I
see
can
some questions in
see,
the chat box?
yes, I can. So
now
we
I
see
can
a lot of compliments to Shri Rajiv Malhotraji. Many people have asked about the book, the availability of the book, whether it is available in the Nepali market as well. And then we see a question which goes as follows: does artificial intelligence affect the psyche and values of the people?
Okay. Hello, is everything okay?
Is Shri Rajiv Malhotraji here?
He's lost connection probably.
I think he's not there.
Namaste everyone, this is Bishwajit here on behalf of Rajiv ji.
Yes,
He'll
please.
be back here in a minute. Please
Okay.
to answer all of your questions. Please wait for him.
Okay.
He'll be back.
Okay. So Rajiv ji would be back in a minute. Okay. And
Yes.
what other questions are there? Can we have a recount of those questions first of all?
Yes. So after that question, on the psyche and values of people, second question goes, what space can we place AI technology in connection with humans? And then we have the next question from Richa Sharma. She says, are the novel interpretations of Indian myth and mythology guided by a prejudiced artificial intelligence or modernized outlook? Smriti asks, how do we go about deconstructing the singular narrative brought about by the algorithms?
There's also the question about availability of Rajiv Malhotraji's book, maybe. And
Yes,
one friend is asking whether it's available in Nepal also.
right.
So we'll get to know. Maybe Biswajit can tell us about the book, or books written by Malhotraji.
So I'm back. Sorry, I didn't
Sir. Okay.
realize there was going to be Q&A, but I'm back and I'm delighted to answer questions. So shoot questions at me.
Now you can please relate the questions.
Yeah, especially questions that are difficult questions. I love to answer those.
Sure, sir.
Right, the difficult ones
Can I
first. No, the first one, please. Yes. Would you like to ask yourself?
Yes, sir. I have a question for sir. Sir, as you said that artificial intelligence is kind of colonizing the third world. After colonization, there started decolonization, and after decolonization, we experienced the third world experienced neocolonization. Neocolonization here, I mean, kind of cultural colonization, culture of colonizing through economy, colonizing through lifestyle, and that is neocolonization. Can we call artificial intelligence as one part of neocolonization in the third world from the Western part?
Sure. I'm very glad that you are studying all this. It's very important. You see, artificial intelligence is as fundamental as the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution in England a couple hundred years ago is what turned it into a colonizer. Without the Industrial Revolution, it did not have the economic might to colonize the world and make India a colony and so on. So it was the power of the industry which they had, and nobody else had this Industrial Revolution for a while. And then France also had it. So they both became colonizers. I see artificial intelligence as the new industrial revolution. It's being called the fourth industrial revolution, and it's probably more dramatic and bigger impact than the previous industrial revolutions. So this industrial revolution is creating haves and have-nots, colonizer and colonized. It's going to decide who are the very rich, super rich people, and who are the very poor people. There is more poor people than ever before, and the amount of equity, amount of income and wealth owned by the bottom 50% as a percentage of total world wealth is lower than before, and the amount of wealth owned by the top 1% is more than ever before. So the big gap and the polarization is happening worse than ever before. So it is not unfair to say that this is the return of the East India Company. This is the return, and there are a lot of zamindars in India. I call them zamindars. In my book, I call them zamindars. They are the zamindars who are bringing all this new stuff, the new East India companies, which are these AI-oriented kind of people. They're bringing them into India, making money as the middleman, because the middleman always makes money. Okay. And so just like the zamindars and the babus, there was a lot of economy for them. We have a lot of new babus in this AI economy, where the new East India companies are these mostly American companies. There were also Chinese companies. We got rid of them. But there were like 6 major American companies, 3 major Chinese companies controlling this whole thing. And besides that, big American companies, there are a lot of middle tier, third tier companies that are all involved in this big ecosystem. So what you have to look at is a very gigantic thing happening, as big as the Industrial Revolution and the colonization of the world. We are returning to that, and it's going to happen in a very powerful way, a much bigger scale. And our people don't know this. This is our job. This is your job, my job, to awaken these people. Imagine if somebody, when the industrial revolution was getting started, could understand what the consequences will be and could go around everywhere and educate people and make them. Whereas people in places like India thought that these guys are bringing us machine-made things. Those machine-made things are superior to what we can make, and we'll buy them. So the whole economy of the world shifted to this industrial economy from England and France is what happened. Now you are fine. I'm telling you that the same AI-based industrialization, new kind of industrialization, new kind of economy, knowledge economy, information economy, media economy, including control of politics. Just like the East India Company controlled Indian politics through the Rajas. They gave the Raja, put him on an elephant and give him a gun salute and send his son to play polo with some people in England, in Cambridge. They did all that. And the same thing is happening now. They've taken Indians to incorporated Indians into their system. Some of these Indians are CEO here, CEO there. So we feel very proud that we must be safe because our Indian bhai is sitting there head of Google or head of Microsoft. But he's actually an individual employee who become very rich on his own. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't think that he's working for us. He's working for his employer. Sundar Pichai is not working for India. He's working for Google. It's very clear to that. And when Sundar Pichai says artificial intelligence is more fundamental breakthrough than electricity, more fundamental breakthrough than the industrial revolution, he's absolutely right. The point is that where are we? Where is India in all this? Has India taken care of itself? So I would say that while the terminology of neo-colonialism that has been around is applicable, but AI is so big and so unique. We need people who understand how algorithms are created, how they become so smart, the importance of big data. India is supplying the 2 raw materials needed to make AI, and yet this AI belongs to some other people. First raw material is brains. India is the largest exporter of brains, which are being used by all these Western countries and Western foreign people to make their things using Indian brains, but these Indian brains don't own any equity. It's like the bricklayer from poor village in Bihar comes to Delhi and he makes a house for a rich man. But at the end, when he's done, he doesn't own one brick even. He doesn't own equity in one brick. He's just given his labor. So the same way, our tech people are laborers. I call them AI coolies, tech coolies, that they're doing all the hard work, and they don't own the fruits of the labor. The second input is big data. A large amount of data is needed for the machines to be trained, and India is a very large source of diversity and hence a very large source of big data. But we have not used our own big data for our own technology. We do not own the intellectual property that can be made by combining our brains and our data. We're exporting the brains and we are giving away for free the data. This is what's happening right now. And Niti Aayog is not taking care of our situation. Niti Aayog invites Google and McKinsey and these kind of people to develop their strategy because they're not able to develop their own strategy. So because they haven't studied these issues deep enough, and I've given away copies of my book. I've talked to these people. I've encouraged them. I want them to come out and have Q&A and discussions. They're not interested because they want to just ignore all this. And they are so closely aligned with the contemporary East India Company equivalent. It's quite scary. So I'm glad that you raised this question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It is much clear to me. It is really clear.
There's another question coming up from Professor C.R.V. Rao, former Vice Chancellor. And Rao sir, may I ask you to kindly unmute yourself and ask your question? Professor Rao, please.
Yeah, yes, please. Thank you, Dr. Rajiv.
You are muted probably, Rao sir. Please unmute yourself. The connection is weak maybe. Am I audible now? Shall I read your question from the chat box? It is there.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, now you're audible.
Yes.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra, for an excellent lecture. Very illustrative, very profound in its thought content, and very right in its approach. That Indian cultural systems should be taken into account in the creation of an artificial intelligence that informs people, that develops a public discourse for the benefit of society. But then my question is this: is there a unified concept of Indian culture that can form the nexus for the creation of an algorithm for artificial intelligence? Does it not, therefore, in the absence of a unified concept of Indian culture, would it not lead to the creation of a public discourse based on, again, a certain kind of colonized perspective within the nation?
You know, you are so brilliant. You are so absolutely right on. You know, my life in this particular part of my life, I used to be an industrialist, but in the last 25, 30 years, as a thinker, as a strategist for India, as a scholar of humanities and social sciences, writing books. I've written 8 books on this subject. My theme has always been, we need an Indian grand narrative. We need an Indian ecosystem in which we can accommodate all the communities of India. We can accommodate the Muslims, the Christians, the people who are atheists, Hindu people, Sikhs, Buddhists, all the different diversity, languages, North, South, whatever. We need an Indian grand narrative, and I've tried very hard to develop my own ideas in this regard, to get other people involved, to get government, Ministry of Culture involved, did not succeed. Get some gurus involved, did not succeed. Get various think tanks involved, universities involved. Maybe this university will join in, but I have not been able to create. I mean, it's not a good idea for one man to put out his own grand narrative idea. It has to be a collective process, because, as you said, if the people keep writing to me and saying, why don't you publish your book? Well, my book is ready, but that is my book. I want it to be a collective effort. I want people to come together, so it is our shared narrative, because that's how it is. And we have to negotiate, exchange ideas. I have principles like mutual respect. I have to respect your difference. Difference with mutual respect is better than being same. Say, rather than saying we're all the same, because then you are not honoring and celebrating their diversity. It's better to say we are different, but we respect each other's differences. So these are there are some ethoses that are very important, Indian ethoses, which allow us to have a discussion and create this unified narrative. If we had created this narrative over the last 25, 30 years like I wanted to, we would be ready for this AI challenge. We would have our own narrative as the foundation for all these algorithms, but we don't. And you're absolutely right. What is going to happen now is, I'm predicting this will happen. These Western narratives are already into the algorithms, and they're Ambani is invaded with all the Google stuff and Facebook stuff, because those people put tens of billions of dollars into the company. All the Indian companies are kind of looking for American collaboration and money and technology, and algorithms come with it. There are certain movements. I don't want to disclose that right at this point in time, because I'm writing about it. There are certain global movements that India has joined officially at the government level and at the industry level. Big movements with an official power structure that Indians have joined, thinking we are joining a kind of a level playing field, but it is not a level playing field. What we have joined is an algorithmic world with a lot of biases in it, and these biases are against our civilization. These biases are against our civilization. So all the fighting people are doing, that there is bias in Rutgers, there's bias with George Soros, there's bias against in the Twitter. All those are fighting the symptoms. You are not fighting the root problem. The root problem is, we do not have our own shared narrative, and we do not have the technology to put it in. We neither have the soft item, which is the narrative, nor the hard item, which is the technology to put it in. We don't have that. China has all of that. China has their narrative, and they are top in the technology, neck to neck with US. US has the technology, and they have their right-wing narrative, their left-wing narrative. They got their narratives there. European Union is developing it. Russia is developing this. Japan is developing this. Even a small country like Israel is having its own self-hood. India does not. So in this new age of the new era, the new epoch of a new industrial revolution with AI as the engine driving it, and all this content, content of different cultures and civilizations embedded, hidden inside it, structures hidden inside it that you have to tease out and deconstruct. In this new epoch, India is not in the top tier, which is USA and China, fighting like England and France were fighting for in the industrial revolution. England and France were fighting for our colonies and who will control, and they had wars with each other. Today, that role of England and versus France is actually US versus China. That is tier one. Tier two are these other powers that will be okay. They may not be world powers, but they will not be taken over. They will neither be colonizers nor colonized. Maybe Russia, maybe Japan, maybe Israel, maybe Europe, France, all these people. India is not even at the second tier. Where are we? So this is a very serious matter. And I have just sent an email to Professor Malhotraji. Please send me the proceedings of this conference you had on AI and ancient India. I wish somebody had told me about it. My whole book is on that. And this is what I spent the last 10 years studying. But I want to understand how far they are, what are they thinking, who are these guys, what are their points of view. This is a very important conversation we should have. So what Professor Rao has done is extremely important. He's taken the issue I've raised, he's taken it to the next level and said, how do we solve this? It's not that easy. And the government doesn't understand. I mean, I've been through 3 or 4 HRD ministers, one after the other, and since the time of Kapil Sibal, talking to them, Murli Manohar Joshi. I've had so many discussions, given hundreds of PowerPoint slides, this and that. But, at the end of the day, I got tired. I said, India is not ready. India just want to receive what the Americans are giving them. The Niti Aayog rather develop a strategic plan on AI, quoting Google here and there and quoting what McKinsey wrote and whatnot. But we don't have our own research. You see, our people have not even studied the impact of AI on India our own way. We have taken the McKinsey report and this World Economic Forum report and some report from Oxford economics, and we've taken reports from Harvard and some from Ernst and Young and these kind of people. Their reports we've taken and we've quoted from those reports. That is what the Niti Aayog work is. And the CII people and the NASSCOM people, who are the keepers of Indian technology, they're also just basically quoting these American reports. So Indians haven't even done our own Purva Paksha about this. We haven't done Purva Paksha. I'm starting the Purva Paksha of AI, Western AI, as a colonizing force. So what has to happen is this. Every state should do a research project on what's the impact of AI in the state economy. It is not enough to do top-down, high-level, how it will affect the industry in Bombay and all that. Every state is going to be affected. Every industry should look at what will happen to our industry. What is going to happen to the automobile industry? There are a few million people working in India's automobile industry. India's automobile industry is going to be wiped out because this new technology will not be using the same carburetor and spark plug, and the kind of products and the parts that our people are making are obsolete. It's a matter of time where this kind of economy is going to squeeze and a lot of people will lose their jobs. So, we are sleeping. The leaders who ought to be keeping up at night, worrying about it, thinking about it, are not doing their job. And that is something I'm glad that Dr. Rao mentioned.
Professor Batra, you're not audible.
Professor Batra, I think you're on mute.
Now I request Dr. Abina Habib to put her question. You can unmute yourself, Abina. She's put her question in the chat box. Abina Habib, are you there? Okay, can we take it from the chat box, maybe? She says, please, could you give me some example as to how the AI is biased against Indianness? There seems to be a problem in understanding it unless you give some concrete example. So,
Okay. So the current fights going on against Twitter, where we feel that Twitter's not taking responsibility for misleading content, for false content, for biased content. That's an example. There are many examples where the map of India shows certain parts of India as not being part of India, and these are part of these systems, digital systems, and they are worldwide. That's an example. If you take a position on CAA and you say, okay, government position is the official position. The official position on 370 and CAA and whatever farmers bill, if you were to consider that to be the benchmark of what is India's position, because it's a democracy, it's a democratically elected government, I may not agree with it, but that's the position of India. Like every democratically elected country has its position. The fight against these in the algorithms is very serious. The algorithms are certainly biased. If I put out a discourse dumping all this, attacking all this, I will get 10 times, 50 times more views. They'll make sure of that. If I'm arguing against them, all my talks criticizing these people as the new East India Company, they all get flagged. So I'm an example. My videos are an example. I have a large amount of instances where I'm being notified that you better stop this and you better change that, and we argue. And sometimes we convince the human beings that this algorithm is biased. The human beings working at Google often agree with us and disagree with their own algorithm, but the algorithm they are not able to override because that requires a very high level person. So the algorithmic bias on what is the nature of caste? Is caste a Hindu problem? Is caste a historical problem? Is it a cultural issue? Is it a more modern issue? Did it emerge from the Vedic times, or did it emerge as a result of historical events that happened later? That's a point of discussion. But the position taken by these algorithms is not something that a lot of people in India would support. The positions taken in these algorithms have come from Western Indologists. It's people sitting in Harvard and Chicago and Berkeley who are close to whose papers and whose research work feeds the training of these algorithms. So the algorithmic bias against Indian culture is huge. It's if you are on social media, you will see these fights every single day. Why is a person who is saying I'm a proud Hindu considered chauvinist, saffron, just for being a proud Hindu? Whereas a person who says I'm a proud Christian, the algorithms don't flag him, because Joe Biden is a proud Christian, and so is Trump. I mean, they're Democrats and Republicans, whichever side you go, they've never denied their faith. They don't have to deny their faith to be legitimate. To be secular, they don't have to say I'm against the majority religion of this country. Nobody would survive in the United States politically if he took that position. But in India, it is required. So this kind of what is politically correct, what is going to be, what is the definition of human rights? Who decides human rights? I mean, all the fights that are going on against amnesty, that is part of this whole thing. The views of certain international agencies, certain international think tanks, certain governments, certain media and social media, those are the views that are very dominant on Indian culture. I mean, this is the reason people are saying, why don't we have a proper NCRT books, and why is Indian history so biased? I mean, that all of that is part of what I'm talking about. AI merely is a force multiplier. AI is a force multiplier. AI does not create new biases. Whatever biases exist, it amplifies them. So if there are gender biases, it will amplify them. If there are biases against blacks, it will amplify them. So whatever the bias wars, the discourse wars are going on in India right now, AI is basically amplifying that. So since the AI is owned and controlled by people on one side and not people on the other side, that is where the bias comes from.
Thank you so much, sir. There's a question from Dr. Rashmi Bajaj. I invite her to put her question here. Dr. Rashmi, are you there?
Yes. Good evening, everybody here. Wonderful conference. Great beginning with Rajiv Malhotraji's address to all of us. Yes, this artificial intelligence and then, the Indian scholarship. The big problem here is that very little native Indian or the Indian scholarship as such exists. Whatever exists and whatever is famous or reputed or has international reputation, that is all leftist only. In that case, what scope do you see for Indian scholarship to make or create a space in artificial intelligence? Because anything Hindu, anything Vedic is such a big, that is such a big allergic thing, that is such an anathema. Then what scope you think there is for creating that kind of space for Vedic or say something really intrinsically Indian there in the artificial algorithms? Yes, please.
Rashmi ji, perfect.
Yeah.
Very, very important question. So artificial intelligence can be it can finish us off and we can be dead because of it's like we are fighting with bows and arrows and somebody's got cannons. Babur brought cannons to India on the land for the first time. There were never cannons before. And that began a whole, it started a whole epoch in Indian history because somebody else owned the weapons. We did not own the weapons. And the Portuguese brought them, the Europeans brought these cannons on ships for the first time. So the land and the sea route to bring cannons into India, into South Asia happened with foreigners doing it. And we did not control these things. We had the metallurgy, we had all the technology, we didn't put it together ourselves. So you see, that's what's happening with AI. And that'll be a very big devastation for India. However, India can also be the person, if we start developing this cannon before Babur comes and brings it, and we develop our cannon, then it will be the other way around. And there is no reason we cannot develop this cannon. We got the manpower who are brilliant people. We got the big data. We don't have the hardware. India does not have the semiconductors. The semiconductor industry is gigantically galloping ahead because AI gobbles up a lot of hardware and speed and quantum computing. So, there are multiple technologies that are needed to fight this race, and a lot of money is needed, a lot of brains are needed. So if India were to create a pro-India algorithmic AI system and teach it to our teachers, school teachers, teach Indian history through these algorithms, the Indian education system should be automated with all of this stuff, and universities teaching courses using our machine learning, our algorithms with our point of view. Then then we'll be not only countering it, we'll be actually on the offensive. India should have something like a GPT-3. Look up what GPT-3 is. And there are equivalents. There is Google Brain. There's China has started something they announced in the last couple of months, which is even bigger than all this. India should have something of that kind. Okay. And in that, think of it like a super brain, AI kind of a brain. And in that, you put in the content, our content. I don't mind if we put in left-wing content, right-wing content, which should be Indian. I don't mind you put in the content of all the religions of India, but it should be pro-India. I mean, you should get Muslims who are, I call them Swadeshi Muslims, get Swadeshi Muslims, put in the Swadeshi Muslim point of view, and you get Christians, you get all the faiths of India, all the points of view of India, and create a kind of a multifaceted, open system, open architecture with many points of view, but they should be very much locked into patriotism, into the sovereignty of India, into the respect for the Indian Rashtra. Certain common denominators should exist among all the people who call themselves Indian, regardless of how much they fight each other. This is the beauty in America. They'll fight all kind of stuff, but they'll all say they're all subscribed to something called American exceptionalism. So you should look at what is meant by American exceptionalism. What is the history of this idea? What does it mean to be that America is the exceptional country of the world? It is supported by the left, by the right, by, you know, whether you are Jimmy Carter, the most left-wing president in recent years, but born again Christian, whether you are, whoever, whether you are Biden, again, same story, a very liberal left-wing, but very solid Catholic, very proud of it. The point is that the Indians lost pride in selfhood because of colonization. So we don't have that, as Rashmiji is saying, our narrative is being defined by other people. For 25 years, I've been saying, India is the largest civilization, largest cultural matrix and civilization whose narrative is controlled from the outside. This is not true of any other big country. Maybe some small little country in Africa or Latin America, they have a similar problem. But they are tiny country. For a large country like India, we've outsourced the study of India to the hands of other people. And when we do set up a Ashoka University, it is still colonized people who come and run it. The kind of people who come and run Ashoka University are worse than JNU. And so the problem of controlling our own discourse has not happened correctly. I have tried to do conferences in India. My foundation, Infinity Foundation, done many conferences in India where we wanted to bring in people from left, right, everywhere, put them together and try to create a kind of an Indian narrative. But the point is, the moment one Westerner comes, one person from Europe comes, everybody goes and looks at this guy as God, and what he tells you must be true. And who is this Rajiv fellow? He's one of us, brown-skinned fellows. He's gone to America, but maybe just ultimately he's one of us only. But this guy is the real thing because he's the real American. You look at him, how he is and all. So our people got this inferiority complex. And with the people who got this inferiority complex, we are not able to be self-empowered. And so this is becoming very dangerous in this age of algorithms. As the problem has been there and our people understand it, there's a lot of fight going on about this, but now the algorithms take it to a new level. That's my message.
Please unmute yourself, Professor Bhatta.
Okay, I was asking about Professor Kapil Kapoor. I don't think he is here because he was to chair the session and he was in transit somewhere. So if he is here, we should notice it. Otherwise, we proceed with one or two more questions. I think he's not here. So can I ask Dr. Shruti Jain now to come up with her question? And Dr. Gopal Naik is here. I'd also request her to say a few words after this because the program has been a little different now than it was envisaged to be. So I'll ask her to be ready with her comment after this. Dr. Shruti, please.
Thank you so much, Rajiv ji. I have been following you for a long time. I do follow your videos. I understand what your message is, right? The spirit is so perfect. I mean, I am an associate professor. I'm talking about myself. Let's begin like this. Who has studied sociologists who are Western, who has studied about India through Indian thinkers like Shri Aurobindo or say Muhammad Iqbal, who have been influenced by the West again. I still think there is a lot to learn from them too. This is very interesting. It's a very interesting ping pong between the East and West. My research has been on the philosophy, on a comparative philosophy, on the reception of Nietzsche in India. And that kind of gave me an insight into the kind of appropriations that have been done in order to understand India as well. But likewise, Indians also did not really understand the West the way it could have been understood, for example. So this is interesting how it goes both ways. what would you like to say there? And my problem is always, when we keep saying Indian culture, well, my India is different from yours. And I think you actually said it in one of, while you're explaining it. You did say that we need to have a shared collective conscious narrative. But still, I think the second part of Professor Rao's question kind of was not taken into consideration, because there is a possibility of taking the colonized perspective only, which is not so good, I feel. What are we doing really? And why do I want to be a Vishwaguru? Why do I want to teach my students to be a Vishwaguru? Why can't they just be themselves and learn and be strong? These are certain genuine questions that I always had in my mind when I heard you. I'm so glad that you're here, and please address these questions for me. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Shruti ji. So let me just respond because you mentioned many things. Firstly, Nietzsche is a very interesting character and was influenced a lot by Buddhism, and that has not been properly attributed. I have 20 books that are being written for many, many years, and I keep putting out one or two here and there, but I have many books in parallel. One of them is on Buddhist influences on Western thought, which go way back in time. Before the colonial era started, the Buddhist influences were there, and the Buddhist influences through a whole lot of mechanisms went into different parts of Europe, especially Germany. So the thing we need to do is what is our tradition calls the Purva Paksha, study of the other. And you're pointing out correctly that we do not have our own authentic view of the West. We don't have our authentic view of China. We do not have our view of the other, because the view we have of Western thought is a Western view. We have the criticism we do of America is the Americans' own criticism. If you go to American studies in JNU, they're reading American authors writing about America. Those who are writing for it and those who are writing against it, those who are left wing, those who are writing, they're all only Americans only. And so we are reading and regurgitating that, as Professor Batra said, that we are basically recycling, Western thought. So this is a very deep problem. This is a problem where, you got to change thinking right from childhood onwards. It is not something that people who are raised. I have so much time arguing with people who consider themselves to be very solidly in our tradition, very patriotic, culturally very much on our, on our wavelength. But when you scratch the surface, beneath the surface, they don't have any knowledge. They think of the Aryan invasion theory as some kind of gospel. I mean, they really have colonial constructs incorporated into them, like apps have been downloaded, and these are very hard to get rid of. So, the problem that Professor Rao mentioned, and the problem that you mentioned, which is that India, because the center, there always have to be a center of the narrative, and then you can hang many different things around it, but there has to be a center that people agree to. And so that center we don't have. It's like a vacuum. And this vacuum is being filled by foreign forces, breaking India forces from here, there, colonized forces, and so on. We don't have it. And this is not something that can be created overnight. It should not be created by one person. It requires a process. It requires a lot of funding. This is nation building. This narrative building is nation building. And we haven't started this. The nation building that was started by Gandhi and continued by the Congress Party had a lot of good things in it, tremendous amount of good things in it. And it could have been expanded to include voices that they had left out. But, that had gone into politics, that got into corruption, and that fell apart. And now that is disabused, and that is sort of considered no good. People don't want it anymore. So we are back to, we are where Gandhi, when he started writing Hind Swaraj, his book Hind Swaraj in the early 1900s, was the first attempt to write about, to propose an Indian narrative. That book was, and some of the people earlier than that, also in the late 1800s, had been doing that kind of work. We really haven't taken that project up. We haven't taken that project of narrative building as nation building forward. We have conference here, conference there, people come, they talk, they do this. But this is not something that you can do one conference to the next. You need a permanent organization. You need a permanent think tank. You need scholars who are very seriously committed to it. And I'm sorry to say, we just don't have it. And you know, I tried my best when I was young guy. I gave up everything to try and build it. And now I'm 70 plus. I'm not going to start anything new at this stage. I'm not going to fight any, go around begging people to, you know, give support and all that. I've done my bit. And there are lots of people like you who've been influenced. And now it's for you to take it forward. So I have to say, basically, Shruti ji, the answer to these questions has to come from people like you, because I've done what I could. And I can tell you what has not worked in India. There are too many camps, too many people who are looking for political success for the next election. They're just looking for the next election. And what can you do to get me votes and make me win in the next election? Please tell me that. Otherwise, I have no time for you. That sort of mentality is there. And India as such, the Rashtra as such is not being looked after. You know, there's a difference between Rashtra and Rajya in the Rig Veda, in all the Vedas. And the Rashtrapati is not supposed to be political, not supposed to be Rajyapati. Rajya is a political governance. It's in the service of the Rashtra. But the Rashtra is a very strong, long-term, you know, vision. It's a grand narrative. The Rashtra is a grand narrative. So who are the keepers of this grand narrative? And this grand narrative cannot be, oh, we did this 100 years ago or 50 years ago. The grand narrative has to be future-oriented. The Rashtra, keepers of the Rashtra, the Rashtrapatis, have to be AI savvy, because this is the next industrial revolution. So this kind of discourse and stuff that I'm talking about should be embraced at the highest levels. But not only I didn't get any calls or anybody wanting to listen to this, even me knocking at the door, one door after another, people are very polite. They'll give you tea, they'll invite you to dinner, they listen to you. They're very, very nice and hospitable, courteous. But at the end of the day, they're not doing anything. Because I think people have become very short-term, jugaad, me and mine and now, and what is very long-term and may not be good for me personally. It's sort of like an orphan. That is, so India's real selfhood, sovereignty, intellectual discourse is not in a secure position right now. And this is the matter of concern I have.
Thank you, sir. Violeta from Russia also actually echoes your words when she says that Russia has its own narrative. It has some kind of exceptionalism kind of thing, but then it is not like America, and there's too much of difference of opinion here also. Now, Violeta, are you there? Would you like to say it yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Over? Yeah, please come on. Yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to Professor Malhotra for his brilliant talk and his discussion, because it has just made me think a lot about our Russian situation, which may seem from outside that we have such a kind of a grand narrative promoted by our president. But actually, if we take the situation inside, we have the same great variety of opinions and great variety of people that are very difficult to make hear each other. I'm one of the people who try to hear different ideas, though I do have my own, of course, but there are people that are very different to make hear each other. So I think you do a great job indeed for your country. And I do think this topic of artificial intelligence and the question of power and the question of influence and colonization, all these issues are very, very important. And we also need to think about them here in Russia and to make a discussion on them. So just a big thank you for your talk.
Thank you very much. Please stay in touch. Please contact me. You can go to www.rajivmalhotra.com and it says contact, and you can send me a note and I will respond to you. I would love to be in contact with all the people who are here, those who've asked questions and other people, because obviously this is a topic of interest to you and interest to me, and we should share share our ideas and take it forward. I'm more than happy to participate in more of these discussions. Maybe one involving Russia and maybe involving other topics also. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, before I call upon Professor Gopal Nayak to thank you, I have to take another question. The last one now. This is from Mr. Paranjal, I think. And that was the question. Sagar Parjoli. He says, Indian reading of deconstruction of postmodern goes in the line from Sankhya philosophy of Prakriti and Purush. The Ardhanarishwar to Hindu culture itself is a great deconstruction. And this is what he says. It's his comment, basically. So in case we have to say something about it, Malhotraji, does it have a relation with Sankhya?
Yeah, I think Sankhya is a very foundational, foundational philosophy, foundational metaphysics, I should say, on which are based so many other Indian thought systems. It's not the only foundation. There are other foundations also that don't start from Sankhya, but Sankhya is certainly very profound, and Sankhya has certainly got the prerequisites as a framework for AI. When you're doing machine learning, we have something called neural networks. So we are trying to mimic how the neurons of the brain work as best as we know. Neuroscientists don't know a whole lot about how it works, but to whatever extent neuroscientists saying this is how neurons work and neural network works, computer scientists mimic it in software and make learning systems, because the brain, one of the qualities of the brain is it's learning. It's always learning. It's not fixed knowledge. It's every time something happens new, it picks up new ideas, it adjusts its algorithm. The brain's algorithm is always learning. And that is why these new machine learning things are based on, are called neural networks, because we're trying to replicate that. Now, I have a research project where I haven't published it yet. I'm taking Indian theory of mind, not the neuroscience, Indian theory of cognition, Indian theory of perception. Sankhya has this, Kashmir Shaivism has this, Buddhism has this. We have several systems where we have very profound theories of how the mind works, how cognition works, how learning works. We have Indian systems of learning, philosophically very different. The idea of learning with music and dance and multimedia and embodying it, very different than the kind of very Western British kind of learning system that was brought into India. So if we were to truly understand the metaphysics of the brain, the mind, the cognition, psychology from the Indian point of view, we will be able to do machine learning and AI based on that. My foundation did for 10, 15 years. We had so many conferences on Indian theories of mind, Indian psychology. We had more than 10 conferences, and we created this whole movement called Indian psychology. The idea was that once we understand Indian approaches to psychology and mind, then eventually when AI becomes mature, I anticipated this decades back, so at some point in time when the hardware and when the AI technology is ready for it, we'll be able to put Indian theories of mind into the machine learning. And then we'll have a very Indian drishti. The machine learning systems, these algorithms will have a kind of an Indian perspective on how it sees the world. We should be doing that. We should definitely be doing that. So I congratulate this gentleman, even though he made a casual comment, but you can open up this comment and it can actually guide you forward.
Thank you, sir. And one more, I just noticed Professor R. Sudarshan, who is Dean of Jindal School of Governance and Public Policy, is here. And he has also written something here. I request him to kindly come alive here and put in his comment. Professor Sudarshan, please, are you there?
Yes, thank you,
Sir.
Professor. No, I've been fascinated listening to this discussion because in the last week of May, the UN system in India and the School of Government and Public Policy, where I'm the dean, we organized a conference on the ethics of artificial intelligence, and the motivation for this was that everything that's been done by way of regulating artificial intelligence, concerns about privacy and humanity and self-worth and all of that have all been influenced by a narrow spectrum of Western philosophy, largely utilitarian, the greatest good of the greatest number, not differentiating between what is the right thing to do and what is good for business, right? So we wanted to bring in alternative perspectives. And we invited Professor Rajiv Malhotra for this by going to the contact page in the website of the foundation, but we didn't get a response from him. So I was very disappointed. And then, fortunately for us, one of our speakers, we had a number of speakers speaking to Confucianism, Buddhism, Advaita, was Sarvapriyananda. And what he did at the start of his presentation was to hold up Professor Malhotra's book, which in fact I have a copy of and which I've read, and summarized it briefly, right? But we missed him. So now I feel envious that you are able to get him from our university and I couldn't. And so I want to organize another conference on this, on the how will regulatory frameworks, public policy frameworks, how should they be informed by perspectives coming from our philosophies, not the Western philosophies, but our philosophies in terms of whether it's Vedanta or Buddhism or Confucianism, whatever it is, we need to explore it. But instead of just imitating regulatory frameworks that Facebook and Twitter themselves create for themselves, as if they are great, outstanding, ethical guardians of our privacy, we need to question this. We need to question what is this phenomenon, artificial intelligence? How do we approach it from a perspective that is ours? Yes. And so this is what I wish to do next. And I'm very thrilled that you've had this, in the literary conference, Professor Rajiv Malhotra speaking and sharing his views. But there's a lot of work to be done. And one of the places, today, I had, we had a session and we are doing this World Education Conference, 3 days. Rajkumar has phenomenal energy. I don't know where he gets it. But I did a session with Sahana Singh. Now, Sahana Singh lives in Houston. She's a journalist. She's also an economist. She's done some work on water for ADB and so on. But, she cares deeply about our own heritage and how that's severely neglected. What was the learning in our ancient universities that were destroyed? And I had to tell her when I spoke there, Professor Malhotra, I had to tell her that, I studied in Mysore University, Bangalore University, Delhi University. It's only when I got to Oxford that I could meet Bimal Matilal, who was then a professor of Eastern religions and ethics, a chair that Radhakrishnan held, to understand there's something rich and valuable in India. Then I got a fellowship at Cambridge and St. John's College, and we created something called the Yajnavalkya Parishad. And Julius Lipner was a great scholar of Ramanuja, not in a religious way, but in terms of tarka, in terms of argument, in terms of logic, in terms of what is pramana, what do you accept as proof. This is rich, and nothing in our educational system enables any student to get even an iota of it. And I was sad to say, I was in tears when I read David Shulman's biography of Tamil. It's called Tamil biography. Why? It's my mother tongue. And I have to depend and learn about my mother tongue from David Shulman, the University of, Hebrew University in Jerusalem, as to what it is about this language. And it clarifies a number of misunderstandings for this whole Dravidian movement, as if Dravidia is separate. I mean, the very grammar of Tamil prescribes how you incorporate into the Tamil language Sanskrit, right? From the very outset. So there's been no cultural difference between the north and the south and so on. But the evidence is in the language, in the Mori, what is spoken. Now, how do I learn this at my late age?
Sir, sorry to interrupt. The connection might be cut because we are running short of time now, and the connection might be cut.
No,
so please,
I just want
you have to be a little brief.
Professor Malhotra and say that,
So
important.
So may I just respond very quickly? First of all, I want to thank Professor Sudarshan for his comments. I want to apologize, but I want to give you a reason. May 25th, I had a very serious surgery, spinal cord surgery with 30-inch incision from my neck down to my tailbone, the whole back, and 5 inches deep. And they installed 26 pieces of metal hardware in my back. In order to give me another 15 years of working life. I was reaching a point where gradually, due to some shifts in my body, it was becoming more and more difficult to sit upright, to do work for a long time. And probably in the next few years, I would have probably wound up and not been able to continue. But I have 20 more books to finish. And I have a lot of my Swadharma is incomplete. And all the promises I made to my guru, my mother, myself, I need to finish them. So I took this bold step. They told me that at this age, it's very difficult, very dangerous. Don't do it. I went to the best places, Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic and Hospital for Special Surgery and all these great places. Half the surgeons said, we won't touch it. And the other half said, if you want to do it, you better do it soon. So I decided to go for it. And so May and not till now, I've been in recovery. I'm not supposed to sit up straight like this for 90 days, and I'm only 6 weeks into it, but I decided to do this because this topic is very dear to me. I just want you to say that this is the first public appearance I have made since my surgery. And I apologize that I didn't get back, and my team should have gotten back. Somebody should have gotten back because there were other people who were supposed to be looking at this stuff. But that is history. I'm now back in shape. I'm going to be back in shape. I'm going to be here for another 15 years of hard work because I have so much to do for my cause. I'm going slow. For the next month or two, I'll be still very slow. But I would say that as time goes by, I'm going to be more and more actively involved. So if Professor Sudarshan has another event, I would love it. I would love to be part of it. I would love to give shape to this discussion. This is what I've dreamed of. This is all I'm living for. And if there are any of you who have forums, who want to create a mechanism, who want to create an organization, I mean, if there's any way I can help you, I would love to do that. So that is my statement, and I'm making this public promise that Professor Sudarshan, sorry for what happened, but you invite me and do another one, and we will do it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malhotra sir. I'm sorry to be bothering you so much, really. I shouldn't be sitting that long here. But one last quick comment from Professor Prabhat Patabendi from Sri Lanka, who is founding director of International Center for Research and Development. He has just sent his message. A quick comment from you, sir. Professor Patabendi. He is speaking from Canada and is up at this hour, probably 1 o'clock over there.
Good morning from Toronto, Canada. Professor Malhotra, it's a very fruitful discussion about Indianness. I learned a lot about how India helps prosper America through producing tech people, including Canada. Last week, Indian Foreign Ministry has requested Global Affairs Canada to clear visa issues for 33,000 Indian students to come to Canada. So it's Canada's gain. And your people, you say Mother India. But it seems to me, after hearing your discussions, now for Indians, America is great. That's my conclusion. Like, for America is great, for Indians now. That's America's gain, India is losing. But we never say Mother Sri Lanka. It's very rarely say.
Yeah.
But you people say Mother India. But now it's America is great for you guys. So it's very
So, Mother India does not mean that that we cannot learn from others, because the tradition of Purva Paksha is meant for that. The tradition of Purva Paksha says you understand others, including those you don't disagree, that you don't agree with. You study them, you learn them, you get to know them as well as they know themselves, maybe even better. And then you pick up the good things that you can and incorporate them. In fact, Indians were very good at that. Adi Shankara debate with Buddhists and debate with the different kind of traditions. He picked up a lot of arguments and logic. There is a lot of interaction, cross flow between the Buddhist, Madhyamik Buddhism and Vedantins. They're learning from each other. And then the different systems of Vedanta debating each other, disagreeing, but also picking up ideas, learning from each other. Indians were always good at taking something that we have and then incorporating other things from other people to make it even better. If you look at the civil engineering and the technology in the Indus Saraswati civilization, it is not static. It's constantly learning. And there's a lot of import from other places. There's trade going on, intellectual trade also going on. If you look at the history of Indian metallurgy, and my foundation has produced 14 volumes on history of Indian science and technology, which is available. And the history of metallurgy shows that every century or so, that there are big breakthroughs in Indian metallurgy, new kind of things happening. So Indians are not static people, and therefore to learn from the greatness of America, America has got greatness in it, America has got horrible things in it, America has got all of these things, China has got some great things we can learn from, China has got some horrible things, so I would say that we should not become insulated from the rest of the world. We should not become in arrogance, become like, okay, we have nothing to gain. Why do we want to talk to you? We should be like China in the sense, as far as US is concerned, US relations are concerned. China sent lakhs of people to United States to study, but more than 95% of them went back. India sends a large number of people to United States. Most of them don't come back. There's that difference. China picked up all this knowledge. They in fact stole a lot of technology. They sent their, I'm not suggesting that, but they sent their people to go infiltrate every kind of organization, get jobs, learn, and bring the secrets back. And so the Chinese said, why not learn from these Americans? Whatever they've done, good stuff they've done, we'll pick it up. So the whole manufacturing system, the whole system of artificial intelligence they've learned from America, the machine learning, quantum computing they've learned, semiconductors they've learned, so their idea is that, yes, we will learn the greatness of America, bring it back and make it Chinese. We've not done that. We have basically sold out. Our people said, okay, go to America, study, live there, just send us your money, just send us your repatriation. The Ministry of looking at PIOs and all that, all it cares about how they measure success is how much repatriation we're getting. We're not looking at intellectually what is happening to these people. Is somebody looking after them? Is somebody giving them a sense of grand narrative? Is somebody teaching them how to represent India properly? I offer to teach courses on how to project Indianness in the American IT system. When you have thousands of IT people working in this company, that company, there is no indoctrination. China, when they send their people, they indoctrinate them how to defend yourself, how to talk about Tibet, how to talk about Taiwan, how to talk about Hong Kong, what to talk about, what not to talk about, in other words, every Chinese who's sent here is almost like a diplomat, informally, unofficially, because they've indoctrinated them. I've offered it to the Ministry of External Affairs. I've offered this to the Cultural Ministry. I've offered it to the ICCR, who are supposed to be doing this job but haven't done this job. I've offered it to the industrialists. I don't want any money for it. I just want, if you are interested, you organize a coaching system. I will coach. I will coach your executives how to negotiate better with the Americans, how to understand the American mind better. I will coach your young people when they go to America, how to represent themselves, how to feel proud, how to answer questions. What are the embarrassing questions they will ask you? They will ask you all kind of embarrassing questions, whether it is caste, whether it is the treatment of women, how to answer them. I have experience because I lived here 50 years. I have experience in that. But there is no interest in among the Indians to really understand how to engage the Americans. So I would say Mother India should engage America. It should engage Russia. It should engage China. It should engage Europe, Canada, all of that. But it should engage with people who have been trained, who have been indoctrinated. So when these people go, they're not sort of lost. They're not looking for, they're not in awe. I mean, they should hold their ground as people of a great civilization, and yet be able to engage and deal with and debate with the other side. So the love, the appreciation of American greatness is not a bad thing, because there are great qualities. But that should not be, it's not a zero-sum game. It should not be at the cost of feeling inferior and lack of confidence and inferiority complex. It should not be like that. So that's the way I look at it. But thank you. It's a good comment.
Thank you very much, sir. It was wonderful listening to you. And you combine in yourself, the latest in scientific knowledge around the world with the classical and ancient best kind of knowledge that we have in India. So may I now call upon Professor Gopanayak to thank formally our chief guest. Professor Gopanayak, please.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Rajiv ji, for coming here. In fact, when I heard that you are coming, I mean, my joy knew no bounds, and I agree with Professor Sudarshan that the discussion with you is going to be very fruitful for the university, because we are a university which believes in bringing in this, and Professor Sudarshan is kind of pioneered this when bringing in the linguistic plurality and whatever you call, whether it's religious harmony. And with relation to the Dr. Pravnath's question, Rajiv ji has always believed that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the attitude. We are not averse to foreigners, but we want our place on the table. That's what the Indians want. And perhaps Rajiv ji has been fighting for this. And that is perhaps lacking in India, because we give place to many ideas. And when I give place to many ideas, I somehow get muddled up in myself that what is me? So I think our education system has to, and this goes to Shruti's question also, like, do I want to become a Biswaguru? Before becoming a Biswaguru, perhaps I have to know where I'm coming from. What do I stand for? And that's very, very important. And Rajiv ji has been fighting his whole life for this. And being a computer scientist and a technological person, he is kind of given a very scientific spin to all our heritage, cultural heritage, which has been kind of kept as a baggage, cultural baggage to all modern educated people. But now I think Indians are waking up to that realization, and it's perhaps not only a person like Rajiv ji or somebody. I mean, I have grown up with a father who went to Harvard, and he had done his research in Adityaism, and Wendy Doniger's guide is my father's guide also. So, I mean, I have grown up with those things, and I took it for granted that this comes naturally. But unfortunately, like Professor Sudarshan says, we need to teach our younger generation what we are as Indians are, what do we represent. And Rajiv ji, my only request to you is that you are doing a great job, but perhaps we need to do something which can inspire our young our younger generation to take up this issue of identity. What is Indian identity? Indian identity is not necessarily a Hindu identity or as such. And I saw a question, somebody asking, do you agree with the Prime Minister Modi and other things? And here also, I want to take up what you cited about Biden. When Biden was taking his oath as the President of America, he had such a big, the Holy Bible in front of him. Nobody questioned that. And in India, if you do that, I think every opposition party will. And perhaps this is because we are ourselves not sure about where we are coming from, what is our heritage, what do we stand for, and if anyone does that, he's either branded as right or left or whatever, but there is something in between. Indians are not only right or not only left, we have amalgamated all the diverse, forces that shape us. And I think we are very thankful, Rajivji, for sparing such time and making this venue your first public appearance after your thing. And we hope that we will see you for many more conversations. And really gratitude from all of us at this university. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one addition to what you said, Biden's Bible very proudly he calls it, this is my family Bible. In other words, it's like saying ki mere family, this is my family Rig Veda. This has been passed down generation to generation. It's now very old, and this is who I am. So imagine it's not just some Bible book he bought from Amazon the day before. This is a family Bible. This is a very sacred Bible, and this is a very liberal president. And so what's wrong? They're able to do it. Why aren't we able to do it? This is a very important point that you have raised, and thank you so much.
Yes, because there was a question here about Prime Minister Modi, and if Modi says that, he is a Hindu and he has to do something for the Hindu temples, where has he gone wrong? And if I say I am a Hindu and I don't want, Christians to enter Puri temple, how am I wrong? I don't understand. Don't I have the right to, kind of establish my identity as whatever I am? And why should I feel ashamed about it? I think that's the fundamental question every Indian has to ask himself or herself, that what is my identity? Where do I place myself among all the diverse forces? It's not about fighting with each other, but finding a common ground. And that's what perhaps youngsters have to realize and take the nation ahead.
In the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City in Utah, which is the main temple, people who are not members are not allowed. This is true in many places. The church has a membership system. You actually have to join, like you're joining a country club or some kind of a club. You join a member, pay a membership fee. They have a database of who are the members of this church. And there are certain privileges that members are allowed, non-members are not allowed. So this business that if you're not a participant in this faith, you're not allowed in a sacred space, what is wrong with it? Because every faith has rules like that. Non-Muslims cannot go to Makkah and get inside. So what is wrong with that? There are certain spaces, sacred geography. There is certain thing called sacred geography, where certain sites and certain locations, there has to be a protocol who gets in, with what kind of food he's eaten, what kind of clothes, he's got to take his shoes off, whatever, what is in his mind, what is his point of view. All of that has to be aligned with what the purpose of this place is. This is true for every religion, every faith. Native Americans had sacred grounds where it would be considered sacrilegious for a person who's not bona fide to come and mess around and so this is, Indians need to understand international traditions. We need to do Purv Paksha on other people. Rather than getting defensive, you should be able to put all the stuff out on the table and say how many mosques there are, how many synagogues there are, how many churches there are, all kind of establishments where only certain members are allowed. And this is not something to be apologetic for. So I'm glad you're raising all this.
Yes. And I'm so thankful that this conference, Dr. Batra, has given us a platform to discuss all these issues. And thank you once again, with all my sincere gratitude for Rajivji for coming here and addressing us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Gopa Nayak. She is Director of Global Language Center here. And thank you so much, Rajivji, and everybody here, Professor Pata Bendi, Professor Sudarshan. And with this, we'll conclude this session. And tomorrow we meet at 10 o'clock sharp for the second day of this conference. So thank you very much. Bye for now.
Good night.
Good night.
I'll request everybody to kindly leave now. I, being the host, will leave in the last